Bienvenidos! Welcome everybody! If you know nothing about the Spanish language or you want to polish up on the basics, this video is for you. We'll start with the Spanish nouns. In Spanish, all nouns have gender and number. Let's take a look at some general rules, but remember that they are always exceptions. For the most part, nouns ending in O are masculine. For example, gato, cat, libro, book. And nouns ending with the letter A are feminine. For example, casa, house, mesa, table. But I did mention that there are always exceptions, right? Some of those exceptions are el día, the day. It's masculine. La mano. It ends in O, but it's feminine. El problema. To the masculine list, you can add the endings M-A, ma, the letter E, and the letter N. For example, el problema, as we saw before, the problem. Idioma, idiom. Coche, car. Tren, train. So those endings are usually masculine nouns. Other common endings for feminine nouns are I-O-N or the letter D. For example, nación, nation. Televisión, television. Ciudad, city. So again, these are general rules. And to make nouns plural, it's very easy in Spanish. If a word ends in a vowel, you just add S to make it plural. For example, gato becomes gatos. Libro becomes libros. Casa becomes casas. If a noun ends in a consonant, we usually add ES at the end to make it plural. For example, reloj ends in the letter J. We add ES and it becomes relojes. Rey, king, becomes reyes. And if a noun ends with the letter Z, we change it to CES. For example, luz becomes luces, light and lights. Now let's talk a little bit about the definite and indefinite articles. Articles in Spanish are used similarly to those in English, but there are more of them because the nouns have gender and number. In English, the definite article is va, T-H-E. In Spanish, there are 4 words that mean va. For masculine singular nouns, we use el gato, for example, the cat. But for plural, we're going to use los gatos, the cats. And for feminine singular nouns, we use la casa, the house. And in plural, we'll use las casas. So we have to use the corresponding article to the noun based on gender and number. The same thing happens with indefinite articles. So in English, we have a or an. In Spanish, for a masculine singular noun, we have un gato, a cat. In plural, we use unos, which translates to some. Unos gatos, some cats. And then for feminine singular nouns, we use una casa, a house. And in plural, we use unas casas, some houses. So these are the articles. You just have to remember that they change based on the noun. Let's move on to personal pronouns in Spanish. Just keep in mind that when we create sentences, these pronouns are not necessary in the sentence. And that happens because the verbs have to be conjugated to the person. And we'll take a look at these in a few minutes. So the personal pronouns in Spanish are yo. It means I, yo. Tú, it's an informal you, tú. And some countries use vos. Él, he, él. Ella, she. Usted. Usted also means you, but this is formal. So usted is used with older people and maybe with professionals like a doctor or persons of authority. Tú is used with friends or with other people your own age, siblings, cousins, and sometimes with strangers. But it depends. If it's an older person, we will use usted just to show respect. Then we have nosotros. Nosotros means we, but it's used for a group of people that's all male or it's a mixed group of males and females. And then for an all-female group, we use nosotras. Nosotras. It also means we. In Spain, the plural you is vosotros. Vosotros for an all-male or mixed group, or vosotras. Vosotras for an all-female group. In Mexico and other Latin American countries, we use ustedes. Ustedes. And that means you all. Then we have ellos. Ellos. It means they for an all-male or mixed group. And ellas. Ellas. It also means they, but it's an all-female group. There's no neutral pronoun in Spanish. There's no it. And the personal pronouns are used similarly to English. So, for example, yo tengo un libro. I have a book. Yo is the personal pronoun, the subject of the sentence. Since we're talking about sentences, let's move on to the basic sentence structure in Spanish. It's very similar to the English basic sentence structure. Subject, verb, and complement. So, for example, yo is the subject. I. Tengo is the verb, have. And the complement is un libro, a book. Yo tengo un libro. Another example, yo como pizza. I eat pizza. Yo como pizza. To say you eat pizza, the verb changes. Tú comes pizza. Tú comes pizza. Earlier, I said that we don't really need the personal pronouns in sentences, and this is the reason why. Como and comes both mean eat, but they're conjugated to the different persons. Because they're conjugated to different persons, we already know who the subject is. So we can technically just say como pizza or comes pizza, and the verb indicates the person. To create a negative sentence, it's very simple. We just use the word no before the verb. So, I don't eat pizza becomes yo no como pizza. Or we could drop yo and just say no como pizza. You don't eat pizza turns into tú no comes pizza or no comes pizza. And to create questions without question words, we can just use the affirmative sentence and turn it into a question by giving it the question intonation. For example, ¿comes pizza? ¿Comes pizza? Do you eat pizza? Just make sure that the pronoun is either removed or it's placed after the verb or at the end of the question. So it becomes ¿comes tú pizza? Or ¿comes pizza tú? It's very flexible, but we don't want to put it in the beginning because it's a question. And if you have to use it, just use it after the verb or at the end of the sentence. There are, of course, many different ways to create sentences in both Spanish and English. This is the very basic one. When we talk about adjectives in Spanish, they usually come after the noun. So, for example, I have a big house. It turns into tengo una casa grande. Grande comes after house in Spanish. But there are some adjectives that can be placed before or after a noun. It all depends on what you are trying to say. And then adjectives can also come after a verb, just like in English. Listening and reading helps a lot in learning these little rules. So if you're not already listening to music or TV in Spanish and reading, I suggest you start doing it because it's a great way to pick up on these different little things. Adjectives have to match the noun in gender and number. So for example, if I say el coche rojo, it means the red car. El coche rojo. Rojo matches the gender and number of coche. So adjectives can also come after a verb, just like in English. La casa es pequeña. The house is small. La casa es pequeña. Pequeña is the adjective here, and it's describing casa. But if we change the gender or number of the nouns that we mention, we have to change the adjectives. So if we say the red cars, cars being plural, in Spanish we have to change the article to los coches. The noun changes to plural as well, coches. And then rojo becomes rojos. Los coches rojos. So we have to make sure the adjective matches the noun. If we want to say the red house, rojo becomes roja. La casa roja. If we want to turn that into plural, the red houses, then the sentence becomes las casas rojas. Las casas rojas. The same thing happens with pequeña, small. We could say pequeño, pequeñas, pequeños. There are some adjectives that usually end with the letter E, and they're usually the same for both genders. So you just have to add an S to turn them into plural if we use a plural noun. For example, inteligente, which means intelligent or smart. Ella es inteligente. She is smart. Él es inteligente. He is smart. Ellos son inteligentes. They are smart. So here we add the S at the end to make it plural to match the persons. All right, now that we have that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about Spanish verbs and verb tenses. This is a huge topic, and I already have a few videos about verb conjugation in Spanish. I will leave some links on the description to some of these videos. In Spanish, all verbs end in AOR, EOR, or IOR. And there are regular verbs that follow a pattern, and there are irregular verbs that do not. With regular verbs, we just drop the AOR, EOR, or IOR endings, and they get replaced with something else. And here are a few examples on the screen. Regular verbs follow a pattern, but the really tough ones and a lot of the common verbs in Spanish are irregular, and they really just have to be memorized. Verbs have to be conjugated to the person, which is why a lot of the time pronouns are not needed. Let's look at one example with the verb ser, which is one of the meanings of to be. Yo soy, I am. Tú eres, you are. Vos sos, you are. Él es, he is. Ella es, she is. Usted es, you are. Nosotros somos, or nosotras somos, we are. Vosotros or vosotras sois, you all are. Ustedes son, you all are. Ellos or ellas son, they are. So this is the verb ser conjugated in the present tense in the indicative form. So there are 7 variations of a verb for all verb tenses. And Spanish has about 17 different verb tenses. Some sources indicate more, others indicate less. It all varies because there are some tenses that are very rarely used now. But this is a challenge, right? Because you have to learn all these 7 variations for all of the different tenses. And that creates a lot of new words. That's why it's helpful to learn the regular verb conjugations so that you don't have to memorize everything. But with irregular verbs, I would suggest just learning the most common ones first. I actually have an ebook talking about verbs and verb conjugations in Spanish. I'll leave you a link in the description if you'd like to learn more about it. Spanish has 3 different moods, and there are different tenses within each mood. The indicative mood is used for facts and reality, and there are about 10 different tenses within this mood, and it's the most common one. So here are the different tenses. There are 5 simple tenses and there are 5 compound tenses, or the perfect tenses in Spanish. The progressive tenses, like in English, are not technically a tense in Spanish. They are created with the verb estar, which is the second meaning of to be, and the Spanish gerunds. The next mood is the subjunctive mood, which is used for doubts, desires, and hypothetical situations. And there are 6 tenses in the subjunctive moods. These are the most common ones. It also has simple tenses and compound tenses. And then we have the imperative mood, which is used for commands and requests. There's technically only one tense in this mood, but we have different conjugations for the affirmative and the negative sentences, or requests, or orders. Verb conjugations is one of the most difficult things to learn and master in Spanish, but it's not impossible. I'll leave you a link on the description with a video explaining these different moods. Let's move on to the verb gustar and other similar verbs. There are some verbs that work just like I mentioned before, like they're conjugated in the different forms, but then there are some of these verbs like gustar that are conjugated differently. Gustar is commonly translated as to like, but it's easier to think about it as something is pleasing to the subject. To use gustar and other verbs like this, we need the indirect object pronouns. So we have me, which means to me, te, to you, le, to him, to her, or to you for the formal you, nos, to us, os, to you all in Spain, les, to them or to you all. So for example, I like music becomes me gusta la música. Me gusta la música. You like soccer becomes te gusta el fútbol. You for the informal you. Te gusta el fútbol. He, she, or you like the movies becomes le gusta el cine. Le gusta el cine. We like dogs becomes nos gustan los perros. Nos gustan los perros. You all like traveling becomes os gusta viajar. They or you all like flowers. Les gustan las flores. Les gustan las flores. So what we see here is the indirect object pronoun and then either gusta with a singular noun or verb and gustan with plural nouns. So we just change those words based on the nouns. And again, I have a dedicated video to this and I'll leave you links on the description. But other verbs that are used like this are encantar, which means to love. We either use encanta or encantan based on the nouns. Interesar, to be interested in. Interesa or interesan. Doler, to hurt. Duele or duelen. The word that we'll use depends on the noun, on the thing that we like, on the thing that we love, on the thing that we're interested in, on the thing that hurts. Okay, let's move on from grammar points to actual sentences and words that we use in daily life and that everyone should know. For polite words or phrases, we have sí, it means yes, sí. No means no, no. Hola, hello or hi, hola. Buenos días, good morning, buenos días. Buenas tardes, good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Buenas noches, good evening or good night. Buenas noches. Adiós, goodbye or bye. Adiós. Hasta luego. See you later. Hasta luego. Mucho gusto. Nice to meet you. Mucho gusto. Gracias. Thank you or thanks. Gracias. De nada. You're welcome. De nada. Por favor. Please. Por favor. Con permiso. Excuse me or pardon me. Con permiso. No entiendo. I don't understand. No entiendo. And here are common questions and answers. ¿Cuál es tu nombre? What's your name? ¿Cuál es tu nombre? And we answer, mi nombre es Liliana. My name is Liliana. Mi nombre es. Another way to ask for your name is, ¿cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas? It's also what's your name, but it's technically how are you called? And we answer, Me llamo Liliana. My name is Liliana. Or I'm called Liliana. Me llamo Liliana. Me llamo. ¿Cómo estás? How are you? ¿Cómo estás? This is for the informal you. If you want to use it for the formal you, it will be ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo está? To answer, estoy bien. I'm fine. Estoy bien. ¿De dónde eres? Where are you from? ¿De dónde eres? Again, for the informal you. For the formal you is ¿de dónde es? ¿De dónde es? And to answer, soy de México. I'm from Mexico. Soy de México. ¿Dónde vives? Where do you live? ¿Dónde vives? For the informal you. For the formal you, we can use ¿dónde vive? ¿Dónde vive? And to answer, vivo en. I live in. Vivo en. ¿Cuántos años tienes? How old are you? ¿Cuántos años tienes? For the informal you. For the formal you, we can ask ¿cuántos años tiene? ¿Cuántos años tiene? And to answer, tengo, then you say the number and finish with años. I'm number years old. Tengo años. It's super important that you add the ñ and not say the n because the word changes a lot. Since we are talking about the numbers, it's important to learn them because they're used in many common situations like your age, telling your phone number, the time, prices, and more. So here are the numbers from 1 to 100. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, siete, ocho, nueve, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 38, 39, 39, 40, 40, 41, 41, 42, 42, 43, 43, 44, 44, 45, 45, 46, 46, 47, 47, 48, 48, 49, 49, 50, 50, 51, 51, 52, 52, 53, 53, 54, 54, 55, 55, 56, 56, 57, 57, 58, 58, 59, 59, 60, 60, 61, 61, 62, 62, 63, 63, 64, 64, 65, 65, 66, 66, 67, 67, 68, 68, 69, 69, 70, 70, 71, 71, 72, 72, 73, 73, 74, 74, 75, 75, 76, 76, 77, 77, 78, 78, 79, 79, 80, 80, 81, 81, 82, 82, 83, 83, 84, 84, 85, 85, 86, 86, 87, 87, 88, 88, 89, 89, 90, 90, 91, 91, 92, 92, 93, 93, 94, 94, 95, 95, 96, 96, 97, 97, 98, 98, 99, 99, 100, 100. As I mentioned, one of the ways to use numbers is to tell the time. To tell the time, we can ask, ¿Qué hora es? What time is it? ¿Qué hora es? We're going to use es la una. Es la una. it's 1. Or es la una en punto. It's 1 o'clock. En punto. En punto means o'clock. That's the only time when we use es la for 1 o'clock. For any other time, we use son las. For example, son las 2. It's 2. Or son las 2 en punto. It's 2 o'clock. Another common way to use the numbers is with pricing. ¿Cuánto cuesta esto? How much is this? ¿Cuánto cuesta esto? And then we answer, cuesta, and then the amount. $10. It's $10. Cuesta $10. Instead of esto, we can actually say the noun. ¿Cuánto cuesta este vestido? Or ¿cuánto cuesta el vestido? It all depends on what you're trying to say. How much is this dress? How much is that dress? The last section is about pronunciation tips. Spanish is a phonetic language. That means that the words sound as they are written. So it's a lot easier to learn. I have a 30 video series on my channel, and I'll leave you the link on the description talking just about this pronunciation. The alphabet in Spanish is very similar to that in English, but it has one more letter, which is the letter ñ. The rest of the letters are the same. So we have 5 vowels. A, E, I, O, U. In words, the sound of those vowels is the same. So if we see this word, mamá, the M and the A will always sound like ma. So we have mañana. It uses 3 A's. Mañana. The same sound for all of those 3. We don't have a long sound, a short sound. It's all the same. I really hope you're able to watch that 30 video series. I think it's really good, especially when you're just starting to learn. There are some key differences. In Spanish, the H is silent, like in hola. It's not hola, like in English. And then we have a few other letter sounds that are not in the alphabet, like the double L. It sounds like the letter Y or the letter J in English. It all depends on the region, like lluvia, lluvia. And then the letter J in Spanish sounds like the English H. For example, jamón, jamón. It means ham. I hope this was helpful. Here's another video for you to keep learning Spanish. Gracias.